The overhead tricep extension should only really be performed if you have the prerequisite range of motion to be able to get into this position. If you haven't watched the dead bug video, I suggest you watch that before you try this if this exercise is new to you and you are unsure whether you have this range of motion available to you. The objective is to get into full shoulder flexion whilst keeping the distance between your rib and your hip somewhat similar to resting. So when you're in a neutral spine position here, the distance between the front of your rib and your hip should be similar to when you are pressing overhead here. So you may be able to hold this dumbbell above your head, but if you're doing it at the expense of this spinal structure here, it's not that you're going to cause damage to the spinal structure because the load you're going to be lifting isn't very much. So you're not going to do your spine any damage, but it just means that you haven't effectively earned the ability to be able to get into this position. So your triceps aren't going to be ready for this position or some parts of your shoulder. So it's not to protect your spine, it's just to protect your shoulder joints. And you can do this exact same exercise on an incline bench instead. So if you set yourself up on a 45-degree incline bench and you have the dumbbell hanging over the edge of the bench, that will be a better version of this exercise if you don't have this position here. If you do have this range of motion, then this is a really great exercise because it trains the tricep in its longest range of motion. And so as a result of that, you can get a really nice stretch sensation at the bottom and you can squeeze it nicely at the top as well. You'll see there's a tiny rotation in my upper arm. As my arm is bent, my elbow is facing more forwards, and then as it gets towards the top, it turns outwards a little bit. That's just so that you can get a better contraction and a completely straight arm at the top. If you use this as a guide, you should always be able to see the side of your face behind your arm. If, as you lower the dumbbell down behind your head, your elbow comes too far forward and it completely covered my face, for example, I would be effectively losing the range of motion in my shoulder side of the tricep as a sacrifice for gaining it through bending my elbow. The further back you keep your elbows, typically the lighter the weight you're going to be able to lift. So there's a bit of a compromise between making progressions in actually loading enough weight through the tissues. The triceps are strong muscles, so they will need a little bit of load to create some kind of growth. However, if you do this too heavy too quick, it will be very unstable and it's not best advised. Start light with this exercise and focus on higher rep ranges, and you should get a very nice sensation at the end. I find personally it's one of these exercises that doesn't really feel like it's doing as much during the exercise, but then when you lower the dumbbell down and you've finished, you realize that it has actually been working.